Englebreston is here tonight, and Daniel, guys, Daniel is a former student of mine, actually. Graduated with flying colors from UNCG, and a degree in business and economics? Marketing and economics. And he has since plunged himself into this world of digital marketing and lead generation. Very, very hot area, data management and all that, very hot area. So if you guys are interested, no, you can't sit in the back 2 rows, sorry. You have to come down. So if you are interested in digital marketing and in that space, you will almost certainly have a job when you get out of here. Even if you're not interested in that and want to be an entrepreneur or do any other kind of job, it's a really good thing to know about because it is definitely a way to the future in terms of helping businesses to run and grow. So we are delighted he's going to be here tonight. Keep pace with him. He's going to go through this material fairly fast. So keep up with him. There's constructs that he's going to share with you about numbers. He's got some tables in here. I will have this presentation so I can get it to you guys through Sakai from your classes, so you'll be able to have a copy of it. So don't worry about trying to scribble things down as much as focus on following him because he's got a lot to get through, okay? So with that, I'll turn it over to Daniel Englebreston.
Thank you for coming. I know it's later in the day. Some people were required, some people were optional, so I do appreciate it. The biggest goal for today is I want you guys to walk away understanding what a digital campaign is and how data can be used to drive revenue for businesses on the internet. And that is what I do. So a little bit about me. So I'm digital marketing manager for Gilbarco Veeder-Root, which is a global company that makes pretty much all the gas pumps in the world, or the biggest share of gas pumps in the world. If you're in the space, you think of Gilbarco Veeder-Root like you would think of Kleenex in the tissue world. That's that big of market share. So that's what I do right now. I do this for gas pumps on the internet, basically, which is part of Danaher Corporation, which is a 65,000 employee Fortune 100 company. So I do this in a very professional environment with a team of professionals, and I often collaborate with other Danaher opcos, actually on a weekly basis. And I go to events like this, actually, where I'm learning on a fairly regular basis through Danaher. So as Polly said, I went to school at UNCG, got my degree in marketing and economics, and I've been in the field for about 5 years. I started out in a smaller company. I was running a department, had 10 direct reports, built websites, did all the digital marketing, did all that good stuff, and then got recruited out by Danaher about a year ago, a little over a year ago, and now I do it at Danaher here in Greensboro. So fun fact, I always like to point this out, I love to race cars, just saying, so add some depth to who I am. So what is digital marketing? So digital marketing, well, as I would define it here, is the use of digitally interactive media to promote a product or a brand. So some digital interactive media that you might be familiar with, a website or SEO or blog, those are pretty common. Everybody knows what that is. Something you might not think about is pay-per-click advertising, search engine optimization, or digital display and remarketing on the internet. So we're going to really dig into that and give you a good feel for what those things are. Before we get there, I just want to talk a little bit about why is this important? Why should you even care about this? So for some consumer trends, this one's from Interconnected World. 61% of global internet users research products online. 61% research products online. 44% of online shoppers begin by using a search engine. That stat is actually a year old, and I couldn't find a formal newer one, but I know it's actually much higher now. And then Cisco will tell you that 78% of shoppers use the internet to research or purchase products or services. So people are moving to the internet to find and buy products. And it is, as Polly said, a very hot space right now. A lot of jobs in the field. So if this interests you at all, just go to the internet and type in digital marketing manager, and you'll learn how many jobs there are in this field right now. So for some industry trends, to back it up from the marketer's point of view, Duke University did a survey last year where they showed that traditional advertising spend is forecasted to decline by 161% year over year in 2013, so this year. 161% decline in traditional advertising. So Adobe did a survey, 38% of agencies and 39% of companies rated content marketing their top priority. So content marketing isn't exactly digital marketing, but it's a lot of what we're talking about today. So high priority for a lot of big businesses, not just business to business, but business to consumer. You know, and then another quote that I found, we are at the end of the digital beginning as companies reshape and retool for life in the new normal. So one quote I heard recently from a Danaher director was that in 20 years, it won't be digital marketing, it'll just be marketing. You know, it's just where the effort and the resources are going. So as I would define digital marketing, what I do is delivering relevant content via digital medium that satisfies a user's need in a way that encourages that user to engage with my product or brand on some stage of the buy cycle, which we're going to look at in more detail. So to get started, I wanted to kind of put all this in context and run through a real quick scenario of how somebody's user experience on the internet would go when buying a product. So we're going to run through like a 10-minute scenario of somebody buying something online. And we're going to follow him as he moves through the buy cycle for awareness, consideration, preference, purchase, repurchase. And you know, a big point here I want to point out, 78% of all shoppers use the internet to research and purchase products online. That's a quote from Google. So here's my sample scenario. So a buyer wants to buy a Wake Forest sports gear on the internet. The buyer likes football. The buyer just became aware that he doesn't own any sports gear and really needs some sports gear. And the buyer wants some Wake Forest sports gear now. So what do? Currently, what do you do if you want to buy something? You go to Google and you type in buy sports gear. So that's what this guy does. He goes to Google, he types in Wake Forest sports gear at the top, number 1. Number 2, he's going to click on the very first thing that comes up. It says Wake Forest Demon Deacons gear. So from there, you're going to land on your first page and you're going to see all these different options. Bear with me as we walk through this process. So you're buying a sweatshirt, you see all these different options. They highlight one right here from Nike, it's $70. You're like, oh, that's pretty cool. Let's go back and see what else we can find. So now you've learned a little bit about what's out there on the internet, you're starting to develop some options. You found one that you kind of like, you kind of know how much it costs. Well now, you know, I want to buy a sweatshirt, that's what I'm going to do. So I'm moving through to the next stage. Back to the Google search engine, type in Wake Forest sports gear. I find another one, you can shop online. Let's go to the bookstore, it looks legit. We'll check that out. Sweatshirts, moving along. Here's that same sweatshirt. I really like the sweatshirt. It's $70. You know what? I've only got $60 though. So let's go back to the search engine again and let's just see what we can find. So now I'm typing cheap Wake Forest sports gear because I'm cheap and I only have $50. So we go back, type it in. Over here I see the same place but it says outlet. So I'm like, okay, that sounds good. Let's go to an outlet and see if we can find a cheaper sweatshirt. And all this is happening in 20 minutes as you're just looking for a sweatshirt on the internet. So back, you see it, boom, there's my same sweatshirt again. This has got to be the most popular sweatshirt on the internet. I really want this sweatshirt, but you know what, it's still $70. I typed cheap into the search engine and it came up the same price. This is not what I was expecting at all, not cool. So now I'm to the point where I know exactly what I want, I know exactly how much I want to spend for it. I found it on the internet in several places. If I could just find it for the price that I want, then I would buy it. So now we're going to go back to Google again. We're going to type in cheap Wake Forest sports gear. We're going to click on this listing over here. It specifically says cheap football gear. We're going to go to that website, and boom, there's my sweatshirt, and guess what? It's on sale for $10. Looks pretty good. But in this scenario, let's see, I remember Eastbay is a pretty cool brand. They've got my sweatshirt for cheap. Turns out they're on Facebook up here at the top. Let's just real quick look at their Facebook page. Next thing you know, this is real content. This is by chance. Boom, there's a sweatshirt promo right there on their Facebook page. This is awesome. I'm trying to buy a promo. They're selling promo. I just found a coupon. This is great. So I'm going to go back to the website to make my purchase. I'm back on the website. I'm like, you know what? Sometimes I get coupons via email. Let's sign up for their email list and just see what happens. So come over here. We happen to see they have an email list going on. Boom. I got 15% off in my inbox, and this happened a couple of minutes after I signed up. This all really did happen in like a 20-minute period. So here's my coupon. I got 15% off. I am now a motivated buyer. I found my product online. I did a little bit of research. I found what I'm interested in. I found them on Facebook. I liked them. Next thing you know, I'm getting an email. I'm saving 15%. I'm going to buy this product, and I'm going to be very happy with my purchase because I just saved a lot of money and got exactly what I wanted. recap, what just happened? So marketers used search engine optimization. They used pay-per-click advertising, which we're going to talk about how they use this. They used digital display ads. They used email marketing. They used social media. And they used timely and relevant promotions to drive that sell. Because when I went to Google and I said, cheap Wake Forest sweatshirt, I had no idea I was going to end up on Eastbay. I had no idea I was going to buy it from Eastbay. But in a 20-minute period, because some marketer did a good job, I bought from Eastbay when before I wasn't even considering Eastbay. I went to the Demon Deacon bookstore and I was like, that's where I want to buy my product because it makes sense. So within a 20-minute period, I, the marketer, influenced you to buy my product by having timely and relevant content in the right place at the right time, and you didn't even know you were being influenced. So now we're going to turn the tables. Well, actually, before we do that, let's see how that stacks up with the tactics that people use in the industry. So with this chart, you can see that SEO, or websites actually, is the number one. You know, this was a study done in 2013. Website's the number one tactic, email marketing number two, social media number three, SEO number four. You can see how many people, I mean, just think for yourself, when's the last time you Googled a company and they didn't have a website? And then when they didn't have a website, when's the last time you actually bought something from them? You wouldn't do it if they didn't have a website, right? 94% of people are using websites. So coincidentally, we're going to take a look at those tactics and do our own campaign. So the question is, how can a marketer, how can we set up a campaign using these tactics to sell some sweatshirts on the internet? So we're going to break it down and we're going to go through step by step and look at some tactics. To do that, I picked out four that I'm calling the pillars of digital marketing. This is not all inclusive. These are definitely exclusive. I just picked four that were very easy. There's a lot of other tactics that we could pick, but I picked the ones that are most commonly used so we could just quickly run through that. And what we're going to do is we're going to run through each one of these tactics and we're going to look at how you would research it, how you would implement it, how you'd measure that, and then what are the applied results. So what are the results you're going to get from that campaign. So here's the scenario. We got 6 months. I got $10,000 in cash. I've got a friend's dad who runs a sweatshirt factory and will let us source sweatshirts from him for $10. And we want to sell our sweaters for $50 on the internet because that's $20 cheaper than everybody else is selling that sweatshirt for. So I'm a Wake Forest college student. I want to pay for my tuition for this year by selling some sweatshirts on the internet. So I'm just making this number up. I want $30,000 in revenue for this semester. Let's see if we can do it using these tactics. So this is a whole lot of bullets, but the reason why I put it up here is because often when I start a campaign in my world, this information, which we're going to run through, is all I have. There's 25 people in my department. They're all on different product teams. I got 6 different campaigns going at one time. I've got 30 minutes with the product director. I have to collect this information and make my campaign. So one of the big things I wanted to deliver to you guys today was some tools that you could actually use if you were going to launch your own campaign. This being one of them because it allows you to focus your thoughts on one spot and have a clear understanding of what you need in advance to start on your campaign. So just quickly writing down the list, your target audience. So in this case, actually let me move to the next slide. So in this case, my target audience is current Wake Forest students because I want to sell my Wake Forest sweatshirts to students. The current VOC that I'm getting, or voice of the customer, also known as feedback from the customer, is that I want quality sports products that I can buy at a good price in order to show my school spirit so that I can stay warm outside. My customers, their pain points right now, their big problems is they don't have a lot of money, they need a sweatshirt right now, and they need to look cool. They're not going to buy a crappy sweatshirt that nobody likes. So the objective here is I got to sell enough sweatshirts to make $30,000 in revenue without spending more than $10K in the process. My market, which we already covered, was existing Wake Forest students. I want to sell a Nike Performance sweatshirt. Not selling anything else. This is a 2013 exclusive product. And the key message is you can buy a trendy sweatshirt that's a great quality for less money and look cool doing it. So that's what the campaign is going to be. So the next thing that you do when you first start the campaign is you do what I'm calling marketing math. So the first step is you collect your information from your product team, or let's say you're a one-man show. You compile all your information in one spot, so you kind of are guiding where you're headed and what your message is and who you're trying to talk to. You want to be focused on this. And the next step is what I'm calling marketing math, which allows you to use some data that exists to set reasonable, realistic targets and keep yourself from spending a lot of money and losing a lot of money in the process on the internet. So you would use this to understand what tactics are feasible based on your budget versus ones that you probably can't really afford to implement, even though they might sound cool. For example, a lot of people want to jump into Facebook because they think social is cool, that's where it's at. But if you don't do your research, you may jump in and find out you can't actually afford it, it doesn't actually make sense for you. So we're going to talk about how you would do that. So before you get started, some things that you have to know is your average sales price, which in our case is $50 for the sweatshirt. The average units per sale, we're only selling one sweatshirt per campaign, or per sale. What's our revenue target? We know it's $30,000. What's our marketing mix? In this case, we're using all digital tactics on the internet. And what are our conversion rates? So, which we'll talk a little bit more about what a conversion rate is. Usually you use historical data, but you can use industry benchmarks as well. So marketing math is really a first step that will set you apart from how other people do this, because a lot of people will just jump in and spend money, whereas if you do a little bit of thinking ahead of time, you can really guide yourself and be smart about how you spend your money. So with all that data, here's one of those big tables that Polly talked about that she's going to pass out. It's a lot of data, but at the top you're basically looking at how much you're trying to make in a month, and you're breaking this all the way down to basically this column right here, which is telling you if you're going to hit your revenue target, this is how many sweatshirts you've got to sell. It's pretty easy math because it's only $50, and you know what your target is. It's 50 divided by your target. So that's how many sweatshirts you got to sell. And we're looking at conversion rate that are benchmarks, and we're going to say in a conservative scenario or an average scenario or an aggressive scenario, and it will help you figure out how many leads you need to generate through the process. So I know I'm blowing over this, but it's not totally crucial that you get real deep into this, other than knowing that if you have the right inputs, using a pretty easy Excel calculator, which is what this is, you can plug in those inputs that we looked at just a minute ago, and it will kick out and give you realistic ranges for where you need to be. And these ranges will help guide you as we move through the process so that you know, okay, if I need to be generating in a conservative scenario 1,000 raw leads a month to hit my target, then I need to be doing the right tactics that's going to reach enough people to convert 1,000 people to come buy my sweatshirt. So that's what you're looking for to help guide you as you're selecting tactics to know what all you need to do for your campaign. And the other piece of the marketing math is how much can you afford to spend on a lead. So again, this is all using the inputs we looked at the beginning, basic Excel math, just paying attention before you get started. The conservative scenario, for the guy that first clicks on my website, I can afford a $2.40 lead. I can pay $2.40 for that guy to come to my site. You know, in an average scenario, $4, and an aggressive scenario, $8. As soon as I start spending more than that, based on our math that we just looked at, I'm going to start losing money. So when I'm selecting my tactics, which we're about to do, and we're going to come back to this for each one of the tactics, when you're selecting that tactic, you can know pretty quick, okay, that's not feasible for me because I'm going to lose money if I use this tactic. In this scenario where we're making $40 on every $50 we sell, you're going to be able to do most tactics because you're making a lot of money. But if you're in a scenario where you're making $10 on every $50, then you start getting really iffy when you get up near $8 because you're like, I don't know if you can't really afford that. So tactic selection, back to where we're going to go with this. Basically what you're trying to achieve, you need to understand what are you trying to achieve with your tactic, sales, awareness, advocacy. You know, how much is your budget, which we just looked at, how much can you spend, and what's the most you can pay for a sale from that tactic, and what do you already have access to. So do you have access to email lists, do you have access to a Facebook page, do you have access to a website, you know, are you already doing any pay-per-click advertising? So you're just going to see what you currently have, which will also help guide what tactics you might be able to use. So back to our scenario, we are going to be using search engine optimization, pay-per-click advertising, social media, and email. That's what we're going to look at. So the first one is SEO, or search engine optimization. So search engine optimization really doesn't cost anything, but that's misleading because it costs you a lot of time and a lot of energy. But it doesn't necessarily cost you any money because it's your site. You can do with it as you will, and however much time you want to spend on it is how much time you'll spend. So it's very time intense, but it can have a huge impact. And for this tactic, we're going to assume that our guy that's selling sweatshirts on the internet has a website. So that's crucial. So what exactly does that mean? So to research for your for search engine optimization, what are you considering when you're starting out to optimize your site, your website for Google? You got to understand, how does your target talk about your product? How does your competition talk about your product? How is your product differentiated? What's the realistic search volume? How many people are actually searching using those terms? And how competitive is the landscape? So my question to you is, let's see if we can come up with 5 different ways that somebody would call a sweatshirt. Just throw it out there. What would you call a sweatshirt? Pullover. Hoodie. Jacket. Anybody else? Fleece. Sweater. We got 5. Any more? Zip up. 6. So my point here is that we don't all call it the same thing. And if I call it sports gear, nobody else in the room might call it sports gear. So if I go to all the effort of optimizing my website for sports gear or for hoodie, and I put all my time and energy into that, and come to find out nobody calls it sports gear and nobody calls it a hoodie, then I just wasted a lot of time and a lot of money. So in this scenario, really the first thing you need to do is go to the source, go to Google, and find out how are people actually calling the product, which you can do. So, and the stat here on the page is that in May 2013, Google was reported to have 66.5% of share for online search. That's why we're looking at Google. And generally speaking, the search engines run basically the same way. I mean, there are some nuances between the two in North America, or between the few. But Google is the big one, and that's who we're going to talk about. So really quick, we're going to go back to our source, and we're going to say, in this scenario, we put in cheap Wake Forest sports gear, and these are the results that we got. And so what you would be doing is you'd be typing in things like cheap Wake Forest hoodie, cheap Wake Forest jacket, cheap Wake Forest fleece. But no, you don't actually have to go and do that every single time. There are tools for that. But that's what you're doing. You're going to the source and you're finding out how many people are actually using these terms and what is actually coming up when I do that. So the two tools that we're going to look at, which are free, and anyone can use, is Google Trends and Google Keyword Planner. So how that tool works, the first one is Google Trends. It's free. This is where you can go and start doing some brainstorming. And in this scenario, I did people in North Carolina, and I used the words sports gear, Wake Forest, sweatshirt, and buy Wake Forest gear. And this was for people in North Carolina. You can go whatever geographic, whatever time frame you want. This is the last 30 days. So, and I'm looking for, which terms are the most commonly used terms in that locale. And this is really more of a fact check tool, more of a way to kind of get, set a compass, so to speak, and start putting some ideas on paper for what terms people might actually be using to search for your product. So, in this scenario, we're talking about sweatshirts, but in my world where you talk about gas pump, for years we called it a fuel dispenser. Come to find out, you're 4 times more likely to have somebody click on it if you call it a gas pump instead of a fuel dispenser. So that is exactly my point. You can come here and find those kinds of things out very easily with free tools. So the next tool, which is a little bit more exciting, is called Google Keyword Planner, which used to be called Google Keyword Tool, I think, and they just changed it. So what you can do here is you can basically cut and paste your list in of 5 or 10 terms, the 6 that we just came up with. You can paste them all in, and then Google's going to spit out a ton of other words that are relevant and related. And not only are they going to give you a ton of other words that are related, this is just how many I can fit on a page, it's also going to tell you how many people are searching for it, per month in our area. 70 people for this one, 70 for this one, 20 for that one, 30 for that one, 1,600 for that one. So you can really quickly start to understand how many people are using what words and how frequently. So again, free tools. So whatever product you're trying to sell, this is how you can go learn how people are actually searching for your product on the internet so that you don't end up optimizing for fleece when everybody else calls it a hoodie. So that is exactly the point. So we're going to talk about some of these other metrics when we get to PPC. So once you've done your research, how exactly do you implement it? I don't want to get too far into the weeds here because we could talk about this literally all day. In my job at Gilbarco, we literally spend 3 days with about 45 people in a room and shifts doing this research. And we spent a whole lot of money to do it. Brought in the agency and everything. So this can take a good deal of time to do that research, but you don't have to spend that much time. At Gift Worker, we've got how many of our products, and we're global and all that. If you're selling a sweatshirt in North Carolina to a Wake Forest student, a little bit more straightforward. So once you have your research, how do you implement? There's a couple of different ways that you implement the content on the site. One is through technical, which is kind of in the coding of the site, which if you're not a coder, then I would highly suggest hiring an agency to do it. But it's not rocket science as long as you have a good content management system for accessing and making edits to your site. And a lot of content management systems, which are the tools that you use to build a website, actually have modules built in to do the technical stuff for you, essentially. So it can be done by yourself, but if you really want to do it right and you've never done any coding before, I would probably want to work with an agency, at least in the beginning, so you can get a feel for it. That's only one part of it. The other part of it is the actual content on your site. So what words are you actually putting on your site? When somebody comes to your home page and you got your intro paragraph or whatever's there, what words are you using to describe your product? Are you calling it a fleece? Are you calling it a hoodie? Are you calling it a sweatshirt? Those words are going to influence how you show up on Google. If Google is coming to your site and trying to understand how relevant is your site to the search terms that people are using. And then you optimize those terms and you can refresh the content periodically. So how do you do that? With some analytics. So now we've not only done our research, we've implemented on our site our keywords, and now we're going to use some analytics to measure and understand. Basically, the big thing takeaway here is the top listing in Google's organic search results receives 33% of all traffic. So if you show up number one on Google, you're going to get 33% of everybody who searches for that term. Number two is 18%. So just in number one and number two, you're going to get 51% of the traffic. 51% number one, number two. So guess what happens if you're number 10 or number 11? You're not going to get any traffic. So nobody ever goes to the second page. Statistically, nobody goes to the second page. So the reason why SEO is important is so that when people are looking for your product, especially if you're selling a sweatshirt on the internet, you want to show up on Google because that's where everybody's going. So let's skip that slide and look at the dashboard. So this is Google Analytics. This is what the tool looks like on the back end. Runs for free on your site. That's another great thing about SEO. It is free, as I pointed out. And it will tell you things like how many people are visiting your site, how many pages are they visiting, how many pages are they visiting, the average person while they're on the site, where's your traffic coming from, what pages are the most common, geographics, all that good stuff. The big takeaway here is that there are free tools, namely Google Analytics, that you can use to go fact check all that research you did on a periodic basis and see how's my site performing against what I thought. You can see what words were people actually using when they landed on my site. So you can understand, is my research right? Do I need to tweak it? Where can I improve it? And you can actually pick out users and follow their path through the site. You can do something called on-page analytics, where you look at a page and you'll say the percent of people who clicked on this, clicked on that, clicked on that. So it can help you understand the path that users take through your site. And all that's free. So with our scenario, in this scenario, we used SEO. We put together a bucket of keywords that was getting 1,000 searches per month. If we're number one and we do our time and we actually do the SEO, we'll get 33% of that traffic. 35% of those guys who come on our site are actually interested in buying sweatshirts, and then half of them actually buy a sweatshirt. So in this scenario, using SEO, I'm going to sell 58 sweatshirts a month, and I didn't have to spend any money. I just put a lot of research up front. Once you've done it, you just go back and tweak it. So you spend the research up front, you're going to sell 58 sweatshirts a month. So how does that stack up? Well, first month, that's pretty close. 60 is what we're trying to get, but as you see, we're ramping up because it gets colder out, and we think we're going to sell more sweatshirts as we ramp up. So we are not where we need to be yet, especially when you start looking at February, 140 sweatshirts. So we know, I didn't have to spend any money. Yes, I'm selling 58 sweatshirts, but if I don't sell more sweatshirts, I'm going to go broke, so I need to sell more sweatshirts because I'm not quite to my target. So the next step that we're going to look at is pay-per-click advertising. So pay-per-click advertising is exactly that. It's where I, the marketer, pays Google dollars for every time somebody clicks on my ad. If you click on my ad, I pay $2, $4, $6, whatever the case. So in this scenario, especially if you're on a tight budget, you don't want people to click on your ads who are not relevant. You don't want people to click on your ads who are not actually going to buy your product. So we're going to look at how to plan the keywords, how to get a feel for the search volume, the competitiveness of those words, and the suggested bid price. So put it back in context, I typed in cheap Wake Forest sports gear here in our first scenario. I actually clicked on this ad right here, which is a PPC ad. You've got PPC up here, then you've got organic results here, and then you've got more PPC over here. So back to my point before, don't think you know what your customer thinks. Know you know what your customer thinks. Do the research. Actually understand how people are searching for it, so that when you show up, you're not delivering bad content. Because in this example, I clicked on the ad thinking I was going to get a cheap sweatshirt, and I show up on the site, and it's not a cheap sweatshirt. So not only am I not getting what I wanted, I'm not buying your product, and I just paid Google $3 for me to click on that for me not to sell you a sweatshirt. So I just spent a lot of money on nothing if I have 100 people clicking on that per month. So that's where research really plays out. You have to make sure that the words you're using match the content that you actually have on your site, so that when people come, they get what they expect. So back to the keyword tool. We're just going to look really quick at this. Same research you did with your SEO words, essentially, except now we're going to be looking at how competitive is it. Google will tell you how competitive it is, and how much do I have to spend per click to be competitive. So with our marketing math, we understood that we could spend between $4 and $8 pretty much for a raw lead, because it's in our budget. So Google's telling me that basically this is not a very competitive thing, and I can spend anywhere from $1.20 to basically nothing and rank for these keywords. So essentially you're building as I would call a basket of keywords to build your ads out on Google, so that when I search cheap Wake Forest sports gear, my ad shows up, when the customer searches, my ad shows up, they click through. If you've done your job right, you've got relevant content because you're selling a cheap sweatshirt, and they'll buy your sweatshirt. So for implementing this, it's very similar to your SEO, another case where you can literally spend days in a room building this out, and it can take you a lot of time to do, but if you do it right, you are essentially writing ads for that section on Google, and paying attention to your stats of who's clicking on it, where are they going, how much time are they spending, do they actually buy, and refine your content as you move forward. Because if you don't, when you do your PPC, you can spend a lot of money really fast and get nothing for it. The worst case scenario that I saw was like $15,000 a month that was just gone. It was totally irrelevant traffic. So once you've built your ads out using the research that we look through, picking out the right words, building the right content, writing the right ads, driving into pages on your website that actually make sense, then you can go back and start tweaking that content based on the data. So mainly we're looking at impression share, click-through rate. We don't need to get lost in the weeds here, but cost per click, cost per conversion, and quality score. So what does all that mean? Biggest one I really want to point out is quality score. Google actually will force rank your ads based on the quality of your content. So it doesn't matter how much money I want to spend. If I want to spend $20 a click, but my content is terrible, Google is going to force rank my ad down. Because at the end of the day, Google wants to make money and only wants to put ads up that people are going to click on. So if my ads are just terrible, if somebody searches for cheap Wake Forest sports gear because I optimize for that, and my ad comes up and my ad actually says luxurious, super expensive sports gear and nobody ever clicks on it, Google will figure that out and force rank you down, and you will end up either not displaying or paying a whole lot more to display in that spot. So that's an extreme scenario, obviously. But by tweaking your ads and making sure that the content you have is actually matching what people are searching for using your research, you can influence how Google ranks you and force rank yourself up as well, making it cheaper for you and getting more clicks per month. So here's a dashboard that we're really quick going to look at. We start talking about, impressions are usually in the millions, or well, every time I ever do this, it's in the millions, which is the number of people who actually saw the ad as it showed up. When you think about the millions and millions of people that use Google, if you've got 200 or 300 words in your basket, millions of people are seeing your ad. In this case, 6 million people, but only 30,000 people actually clicked on the ad. That is the difference between that is going to be you're going to start looking at your impression share and your click-through rates, and you'll start understanding how much room you have to grow. But we could talk about this all day, so I don't want to get too far into it. But essentially, this is a free dashboard through Google where you can understand how many people are seeing it, what kind of click-through rates are you getting, how many conversions, and what are you spending at the end of the day. This guy was spending $21.35 for everybody who converted and bought a sweatshirt, which in our scenario, we don't want to spend $21.30 for somebody to buy a sweatshirt. So for the PPC tactic, we discovered that there are 900 relevant searches per month in North Carolina for Wake Forest sports gear. That if I set my max cost per click at $8 or $1.80 and my budget to $50 a day, then I will get 27.7 conversions per day. So that means conversions per day, which means they've come to my website. And then when they come to my website, 35% of them are actually relevant, 50% of them actually buy, same as my SEO stat. At the end of the day, I'm going to make 146 sales per month at $10.27 a sale. So all that is data that Google gives you that you can figure out. It's not necessarily rocket science. It's algebra. So you can know if I rank well here and I'm willing to spend this amount of money and I've got the right content on my ads and I do my homework properly, I can reasonably expect to sell 146 sweatshirts a month at $10.27 a sale. And the max cost per click was $1.80, which we look here is well under our max for the raw level, $2.40. So even on the conservative scale, really, really good. So we know it's very feasible, it's very scalable. We're going to sell a lot of sweatshirts if we use some PPC. So you can start seeing, compared to your SEO, we're like more than double our SEO. So you can see where it might make sense to spend some money. So yes, you might spend $10.27 a sale, but you're still going to make roughly 40 bucks on your sweatshirt. So it's totally feasible, which we're actually going to look at next. So yeah, now we know that there were 140 something a month plus our 58 that we got from SEO. So we know that we are looking really good on our targets. So our first two tactics that we picked, we're going to sell over our target for sweatshirts just using those two tactics. This is using actual data from Google. So granted, you would have to actually deliver on the content. The content would actually have to be good, and you'd actually have to have a website that would rank the way that we want it to rank. But if you do your homework and you have the most relevant website, it doesn't matter how much money you throw at it. If yours is the most relevant, yours is the most relevant. And that is absolutely how Google works. You can't pay to rank. You have to actually be the best. So I didn't put the slide in there, but essentially what we find out here is that we are well within our spending limit for this tactic. So moving along to social media, my big goal for social media is really for today is to really take a high-level look and have you guys thinking about what you might want to think about when you engage social media and where social media might make sense, might not make sense. I mean, you could take a whole class on social media, so it's going to be very high level, but we'll touch on it a little bit. So what you want to consider when you're talking about social media is awareness, or what do you want to achieve, first of all? Do you want to make people more aware of your product? Do you want to have people become fans of your product and start building advocacy for your product? Do you want to have lead generation? Do you actually want to sell sweatshirts on Facebook? Or do you want people to be talking about your sweatshirt on Facebook so they'll come to your website? Do you want to use it for customer service? So do you want to be collecting complaints on your social media? If so, are you going to respond? Do you want to use it for branding? So really, you need to be thinking about that before you engage social media. And then a big thing you need to consider is, if you're going to have an extended, prolonged conversation with your users or your customers, social media makes sense. But if somebody is coming to your site one time, buying one thing, probably not going to come back, especially because you buy one sweatshirt maybe every couple of years or who knows. Then social media may not make sense, because if you're going to be engaged with your customer over a long period of time, you actually have to do the work to be engaged. And if they're only coming once, and you don't need to build that relationship, don't spend your time doing it. So, real quick, we're going to look at each of the channels and talk about some real high level. So Facebook, 77% of business to consumer companies, so people who sell to consumers, and 43% of business to business, people who sell to business, have acquired customers from Facebook. So yes, people do acquire customers from Facebook, more so in the consumer world, less so in the business world, but you can acquire customers from Facebook. And monthly active users total nearly 850 million. So huge, very broad. You can definitely reach a lot of people, and you can do some digital display ads, which is similar to PPC through Facebook. But we're not going to get into that. But essentially, you need to understand your goal for being on Facebook, and you need to know who your audience is, and do they even exist on Facebook. Facebook is one of those ones that's so big they probably do. But do they exist on Facebook in a way that they're actually going to engage your brand or not? So you need to be thinking about that when you consider Facebook. So looking at Twitter, 34% of marketers have generated leads using Twitter, so much smaller. 69% of followers on Twitter are suggested by friends. So it's much more of a community, it's more friend-driven, not really big for sales. It's great if you want to talk to a lot of people or you want to build awareness for a product, but you need to make sure, is it relevant? Are you going to be able to give relevant content to all these people that they're going to care about? And how much time do you really have to spend on it? In our scenario, we're one guy trying to sell sweatshirts. I don't have time to sit around all day on Twitter to tweet about my sweatshirts, so I may not want to use Twitter for this scenario. But again, what's your goal for being on Twitter, and who's your audience, and do they even exist on Twitter? So again, really high level to get you thinking about what you need to think about before you engage social media for your brand. Next one, LinkedIn. There are 20 million or 200 million registered LinkedIn users worldwide. So that's international, and 50% of users have a bachelor's or graduate's degree. So if you're targeting educated people, that may make perfect sense for you. If you are not targeting educated people, maybe you don't want to go there. But again, it's coming back to knowing your goal, knowing your audience, doing some research, understanding why you're engaging that channel before you engage it. If you're one guy selling some sweatshirts, you don't have all the time in the world. It might sound cool to have a Facebook page or a LinkedIn page, but if you don't have the time to really do it right, and you don't know what you're really going to generate from it, and you're going to get 158 sales from your PPC efforts, which is pretty good, maybe you don't want to spend time on Facebook or LinkedIn or Twitter for so long. A couple more to get through. So you've got Pinterest. Pinterest referrals spend 70% more money than visitors referred from non-social channels. Interesting. Pinterest pins with prices get 36% more likes than those without. So if you are going to put your sweatshirt on Pinterest, put a price tag on it, especially since you're going to be the cheapest, that would probably go over well. 69% of online consumers who visit Pinterest have found an item they bought or wanted to buy, compared with 40% on Facebook. So I think later on in this presentation I'll talk about how if you were going to do it, Pinterest might be a great place to do it. But you have to remember, your target market is Wake Forest students in North Carolina who currently go to school. There's only so many of them. Are they all on Pinterest? So coming back to what's your goal, who's your audience, do they really exist in that space? So the last one I think we're going to look at is Google+. So Google+ is a funny one because nobody uses Google+, but Google gives you a lot of points for being on Google+, so it's kind of one of those things you just have to do if you're going to do it. Where Google+ really shines is if you're already blogging. So if you're already blogging, you can syndicate that through Google+, and get a lot of credit on search engines. So if you're already blogging and you have a website, blog